Hi, I'm Mike Ryan. In our ongoing series of blog videos on our website, Turquoise in America, we have visited the famous turquoise mines. We've talked about price and value. We've learned a lot about turquoise. But while we have seen some beautiful turquoise jewelry, we really haven't focused a video on Native American jewelry. And that's what we're going to do today. You know, turquoise really has only one use, and that's in jewelry. And it is primarily known for fine Native American jewelry. Now, that wasn't always the case. In the period that we cover in Turquoise in America Part 1, the Great American Turquoise Rush, 1890 to 1910, we find that there was no Indian jewelry market. Although there was Indian jewelry, it was primarily on the reservation. And it wasn't until the tourist market started developing in the first and second decades of the last century that we really saw demand for Native American jewelry increase. And with that came an increase in demand for fine turquoise to be included in that jewelry. And that trend has continued ever since. So today we're going to look at some very beautiful Native American jewelry. I thought we'd start our look at turquoise in Native American jewelry by seeing the jewelry that I'm wearing. And you'll notice I have this bolo that is by Arlen Ben. And Arlen Ben is not only an exceptional Native American jeweler, he's also an accomplished photographer. And Arlen did the photos in the Turquoise Gallery in Turquoise in America Part 2, 1910 to 1990. And I really never had anybody else I had in mind to do these photos except Arlen, because Arlen has a very special appreciation for turquoise. And when I asked him, I said, Arlen, I don't want you to just capture the outer beauty of turquoise, but I want you to show the inner essence. And I think he really accomplished that. So here we have this bolo. And this is done in sterling silver fabrication, all hand fabricated. And he uses an overlay of these gold, I think we can see these here, I'll step in a little bit, these gold petroglyph forms that he cuts out and puts in overlay. Exceptionally beautiful. We also have here these tips, which I hope you can see these here. They're very heavy tips, and he's used again that gold overlay petroglyph forms that he's cut and put in there. We also have a grouping of rings that we have here. Got to hold my hand to keep the shakes down here a little bit. And we start off on my forefinger here, and this is Tonia Beta with some beautiful Royston turquoise. We come across here to in a one of the highest grade, gem grade Bisbee you'll ever see. And that is then put in a ring using lost wax technique by Don Suplee. Really, really exceptional piece of jewelry there. And finally, by a well-recognized master, Raymond Yazzie, using incredible inlay with primarily Lone Mountain turquoise. So there we've got a look at somebody wearing some Native American jewelry. So now let's take a look at some other examples of Native American jewelry from turquoise mines from Nevada and Arizona. In this grouping, we're going to look at some beautiful jewelry that is using Lone Mountain turquoise. Now, Lone Mountain was located in 1923, and Doc Wilson took over the operation of that in 1929 when he became partners with Lee Hand. And Doc Wilson was situated in Los Angeles, the American Gem Company, and nearby there was the studio of Fred Peshlikai, Native American jewelry who was really revolutionizing the style of Native American jewelry, which prior to Fred had really been done in a much more heavy style that was favored by the Navajo on the reservation. And Fred really created a much lighter style with different stylized elements. And he was able to source fine Lone Mountain turquoise from Doc Wilson. And we see this in this example of this bracelet that is attributed to Fred Pescasky. Fred began his studio in 1937 in Los Angeles, and he worked all the way through the 60s. And he signed about 75% of his work, but there was about 25% or more that was not signed. This is an unsigned piece, so we can't be certain that it was done by Fred Pescasky, but we have had the opinion of several experts in Fred's work that this is indeed made by Fred Pescasky. So we say attributed to Fred Pescasky. And one of the things we notice that helps in that attribution is this beautiful Lone Mountain turquoise. We come here, we see another very famous artist who was well known for using not just gem grade Lone Mountain, but very high grades of different turquoise. And that was Julian Lovato from the Kiowa Pueblo, also known as Santo Domingo. And I bought this in the 70s, and I remember it was a little store in Cochiti Pueblo, which is the closest pueblo to Santo Domingo. And I saw this and I looked at it and I asked, and they said, yes, it's Julian Lovato and it's done in the Navajo style. And I looked at the price and it was $175, which I gasped because in the 70s, that was a lot of money, especially for a young, newly married couple. But my dear wife, Pam, said, oh, go ahead and get it. And I'm so glad I listened to her because that was certainly a bargain price. And today, this bolo would be considerably more than that. Again, noted for this wonderful matched set of calibrated gem grade Lone Mountain turquoise. We come over here and we see this extraordinary bolo with this wonderful big cab of Lone Mountain, two smaller, and then these fine ones down here in the tips. And this is by Verma Nkwatwa. Now, Verma is the niece of Charles Lolema and was one of only two jewelers that Charles trained. And Verma worked for many years very closely with Charles, and she has this wonderful style, all her own, but certainly influenced by her work with the great master, Charles Lolema. You'll see also in this these fine accent to the Lone Mountain turquoise with the clear sky blue Sleeping Beauty turquoise. In the center here, we see a beautiful buckle. I'm never going to put it on. I tell you, when you have a piece of art like this, you're certainly not, it's not a piece of wearable art in my opinion. And this is a piece of Lee Yazzie. Now, Lee Yazzie started out and he was very well known for his inlay work, and he worked early on in close association with Preston Monange. And the two of them used to work closely with Joe Tanner, the famous Tanner Trading Post. And later on, Preston went out on his own, as did Lee. And here we have this beautiful buckle with this extraordinarily high-grade Lone Mountain turquoise. Finally, here we see an example. This is some inlay work by Wes Willey. And we have this wonderful Lone Mountain, but it has pyrite in it. Now, that's very rare. Most people would say, well, there's no pyrite in Lone Mountain. But there is. And when Wes told me he had this Lone Mountain with pyrite in it, I contacted Tristine Smith, who owns the mine, with her husband, Nick. And
I asked, I said, Wes says he has this turquoise with pyrite. And she says, yes, he does. And I told Nick not to sell that. It was really kind of funny because it is so rare. But you can see a very beautiful, another look for Lone Mountain turquoise.
All right, in this grouping, we're going to continue looking at some extraordinary Nevada turquoise set in equally astounding Native American jewelry. We'll start over here on the left and we'll see some blue gem. And this is done in a bolo by Orville Tsinge, who passed away a few years ago, but is especially noted for his stamp work. And we see examples of that here in this wonderful little bolo. Well, not so little. Really nice piece of very traditional blue gem turquoise. Now, blue gem was also favored by the Zuni. And a lot of this was because their primary source for turquoise and for materials was from C.G. Wallace, who was a trader there at Zuni. And here we have some beautiful examples. Here's a wonderful rainbow band bolo. And down here we see a knife wing by Teddy Wasaki. And both of them using these wonderful examples. Now we're going to assume it's blue gem because it certainly has the look and it would fit the time period that this would have been turquoise that was ready available to the Zuni artists. We move on over here and we see this bracelet, which is repurposed from a watch band. Watch bands were very popular in the 50s and 60s. This has been repurposed because fewer of us actually wear a watch anymore. So when I got this bracelet, which was made by Kenneth Begay, I had it repurposed into a bracelet using this beautiful Godber Burnham turquoise with this wonderful bezel made by Don Suplee. We also see over here, we see some more Godber. And this is Godber in a beautifully made bolo by Sunshine Reeves. And we can see a similarity between the Godber here and the Godber here in this example. Down here we see some very high-grade Candelaria turquoise in this extraordinary cluster setting by Calvin Martinez. Just really an incredible example of very sought-after, high-grade, very high-grade Candelaria turquoise. Moving over here, we see two examples of number 8. Now, the first one is by Frank Catania Sr. And this is a very typical setting that we would find in the work from his Thunderbird Gallery, using this shadow box design. This is using number 8 turquoise in a dark web. And those of you who have read Turquoise in America Part 2, 1910 to 1990, know that the turquoise from number 8 came in two forms. One was a dark web, and the other was a lighter web, a red web. And this was because the dark web came from nuggets that were found in a dark clay, and the other was from red clay. And this one is a beautiful little bolo made by Herbert Taylor, who sadly died very young, and we just don't have a lot of his work, but certainly wonderful to see this example with this very beautiful number 8 turquoise. Finally, we end up here with this quite amazing bead necklace made by Larry Vasquez using coral and Caracal Lake turquoise. Well, last but certainly not least, we're going to move to Arizona and see some examples of some wonderfully high-grade turquoise set in some really quite amazing jewelry. We'll start here at the top. This bracelet done by Michael Kirk, and it's the only piece of stabilized Kingman turquoise that I have. This grade is popularly known as Turquoise Mountain. Those of you who have read Turquoise in America know
that the turquoise from Kingman has come from two areas in the old Mineral Park District, Ithaca Peak and Turquoise Mountain, which was earlier known as Aztec Mountain. A lot of the turquoise in Arizona is soft and needs to be stabilized, but there are different degrees of stabilized turquoise. And here we see an example of what I think is some of the highest level of stabilized turquoise, just really extremely beautiful. It has a very distinctive, what I call a turquoise mountain look to it. Below this, we see a very different type of Kingman turquoise, the real little pinpoint spiderweb, cobweb, what it was known early on. And this piece is set in a beautiful bracelet by Sippy Crazy Horse of Cochiti, Pueblo. Down here we see a Bisbee bracelet. We saw earlier on, we saw a beautiful bolo that I was wearing made by Arlen Ben. And here we see a bracelet. And when I commissioned this piece, I asked Arlen to do a bracelet in the old style, which would be using a lot of the wire and the techniques that would have been used in the earlier periods of Navajo jewelry. And he really didn't know the concept. He didn't know how he was going to approach this. So he waited and waited, and finally he had a dream and he realized what he wanted to do with the bracelet. And I think it's a pretty beautiful dream, and it's really set with this 5-stone gem grade Bisbee turquoise. We're going to return to Kingman up here, and we see this quite amazing big bolo in the very recognized style of Vernon Haskey, with the coral inlay and then of course these wonderful overlay gold design in there with this very, very high gem grade piece of Kingman turquoise. We'll finally finish up here with another piece by Wes Willie, and here he's using a very nice piece of Morenci turquoise, which is readily recognized by the pyrite in there. And he's using an inlay of Bisbee turquoise. So it's a wonderful combination of both Morenci and Bisbee turquoise. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing some beautiful turquoise in some equally beautiful Native American jewelry.